for Cheadle to resign, particularly from House Republicans and at least one congressional Democrat. They have said there was a failure. They have said that the Secret Service was responsible. There was one lawmaker when Cheadle testified here on Capitol Hill that said that she looked negligent because former President Trump survived. But if he had been killed, that bullet again, just less than an inch away from his head, she would be, quote, culpable. I just spoke with House Speaker Mike Johnson moments ago. He gave us live reaction to this. He said, in a sense, that it was about time, that he wanted the Secret Service director to resign. He said that he met with her privately yesterday before she gave testimony to the House Oversight Committee. And he said that he told her that she should take responsibility for the failures, he says, of her department, that the buck essentially stopped with her. And he called on her in person to resign. He echoed calls he's already made. We want to bring in Elizabeth Schultz
now, who's live for us at the White House, who has reaction there. Elizabeth.
Well, Jay, we know that President Biden has ordered this independent review of the Secret Service and the security in the wake of that assassination attempt against former President Trump. The White House, including the Homeland Security Secretary, had previously said that they have 100% confidence in Director Cheadle, but it has become very clear over the past few days and in the wake of those hearings just how much of a security lapse this is that has ultimately forced her to step down. President Biden has insisted that every step needs to be taken to ensure former President Trump's security going forward. That is something that we will continue to feel pressure on as we continue to hear those calls from Republicans to do more to make sure that something like this cannot happen again, Jay.
Elizabeth, I want to go back to you with that in one moment, this idea that this inquiry into what happened will still go on, because I am hearing that myself on Capitol Hill. But we do have a statement now from Kimberly Cheadle, the director of the Secret Service. She sent this resignation in an email to the Secret Service that was obtained by ABC News. I'm reading it live to you here. She says, in part, quote, "As your director, I take full responsibility for the security lapse. However, this incident," referring to that attack on that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, "does not define us. We remain an organization based on integrity." We turn now to our special report here at ABC News.
This is an ABC News special report.
Good morning. I'm Phil Lipoff at ABC News headquarters in New York. We are coming on the air because ABC News has learned that Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle has resigned her post. It comes 24 hours after her blistering hearing in front of the House Oversight Committee investigating the attempted assassination of Donald Trump during his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. During that contentious hearing, lawmakers from both parties called on her to resign, signaling frustration with her refusal to directly answer questions, citing the ongoing investigation into the shooting. Director Cheadle accepting full responsibility, calling it the agency's most significant operational failure in decades, and acknowledging, quote, "On June 13th, we failed." Cheadle forcefully pushed back against accusations that the Secret Service had denied requests for additional security at that rally. She also revealed a local SWAT team spotted gunman Thomas Crooks on the roof of that warehouse approximately 18 minutes before Trump took the stage, adding the Secret Service was alerted between 2 to 5 times about a suspicious person before that first shot was even fired. Cheadle claiming word of a possible threat was never given to the Secret Service. If it had, Donald Trump's security would not have allowed him to take the stage. Cheadle saying Crooks wasn't considered a threat until just seconds before that shooting. Let's get right to ABC Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas. Pierre, during that blistering hearing yesterday, several times your interview with Cheadle was cited. Does this surprise you that she is stepping down?
Well, as late as last night, Phil, she was maintaining that she would not step down, that she felt she was in the best position to carry on the mission of the Secret Service. But clearly overnight, after seeing that she had become a distraction to the Secret Service after that, as you said, blistering hearing, it was one of the most intense grilling I've ever seen a public official go through, in which Democrats and Republicans piled on with question after question. For some reason, she simply chose not to answer some of the specifics that she had the details with. She would not do it. Democrats and Republicans, again, calling on her to step down, to say if she didn't step down that she should be fired. Knowing that overnight, clearly she thought long and hard about it. And this statement that we have that was read to the workforce sums it up. In light of recent events, it is with a heavy heart made the difficult decision to step down as your director. But I think the key, again, was she was not simply able to give a clear-cut answer to the question that everyone has been focused on. Why was there not Secret Service or law enforcement personnel on top of the roof? Why was there not law enforcement personnel stationed around that building that had a clear line of sight directly to the former president? Why was there not law enforcement personnel around the building to make sure no one could get to the top of the roof? The agency was not able to answer that question clearly. Law enforcement and state and law enforcement officials were clearly not in position to do the job they needed to do. And Phil, I think the key thing is she talked about the notion that there were operational plans discussed, but she would not identify the people at the Secret Service who were responsible for putting that plan in place. Given that, law enforcement officials said you're stonewalling. Congressional figures were very upset with her, and she had no room, no sympathy. I've never seen a hearing quite like we saw yesterday.
Yeah, and Pierre, at one point, some frustrated lawmaker actually said, you gave the ABC News reporter more answers than you're giving us. It just seemed like whether she was prepared or not prepared, she could have told lawmakers, hey, this is an active investigation. I can't give these details, but she couldn't even do that yesterday, Pierre.
Bill, here's a key thing. We know for a fact that the FBI and the Secret Service briefed members of Congress last week with a tick-tock, blow by blow, about what they knew at this moment in terms of what happened in terms of the assassination attempt. Why she did not give that information that they gave to Congress behind closed doors more openly will be a question that's pondered, and it's the reason why she's no longer in office today.
And Aaron Katersky is here with me in studio. Aaron, we heard Pierre talk a little bit about that, but you have her full resignation letter here.
The resignation letter was sent in a message to the workforce a little less than a half hour ago, Phil, and it simply said that she did not want those bipartisan calls for her resignation to become a distraction. And so she says, with a heavy heart, she has made the difficult decision to step down as director. These bipartisan calls came almost immediately as soon as that hearing started. And the final one came from Jamie Raskin, the ranking member, who waited until the but to resign. There wasn't a way that she was going to survive, given the what many in the committee viewed as the failings of the Secret Service, which she says she takes full responsibility for, what she called a security lapse. But after the bipartisan calls, Phil, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, and she said the buck stops here, and today the buck stopped with her. Aaron, thank you. Pierre, thank you as well. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. We'll have a full wrap-up on World News Tonight with David Muir. For now, I'm Phil Lipoff. We'll see you soon.
Our thanks to Phil Lipoff for that special report already. Our coverage continues now of Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle resigning in the wake of that assassination attempt on former President Trump at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm Jay O'Brien. I'm speaking to you here from Capitol Hill, where there have been repeated calls for the Secret Service Director to resign in the wake of that assassination attempt, including from the top Republican here on Capitol Hill, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. I just spoke with him moments ago, getting his live reaction to that news that was just sinking in for him. I believe we have that sound of Speaker Johnson. I want to play it for you now.
I'm happy to see that she has resigned. She should have done it sooner. Accountability begins at the top. I told her that in the library yesterday morning before she went out for that hearing, and I said it's not personal, but there must be accountability, there must be responsibility. I noted in there the Secret Service has an extraordinarily important job right now, and they have zero margin for error. What we saw Saturday last was a series of errors and oversights. So whomever is appointed to replace her, I hope will be, very sober-minded about those responsibilities, and that they will look to improve the processes so that the people can have faith in that agency. The task force that we're setting up will have that responsibility. They will look to investigate what went wrong, to ensure accountability beyond Director Cheadle. If there are others in the chain of command that need to be held accountable, we'll make sure that that happens. And ultimately, we want to make sure that these kinds of things never happen again.
Couple things to keep in mind with what the speaker just said. The first is you heard him talk there about a conversation he had in the quote-unquote library. That is because Speaker Mike Johnson made a rare appearance at that oversight hearing in which the Secret Service director testified yesterday. Before the hearing, he met with her privately. Again, it is very rare for a Speaker of the House to do that, and he recounted for us there in the hallway behind me just moments ago that he said to her he believes that she should resign, and believes that
her failure, the failure of her agency, goes all the way up to the top. He also said that there will continue to be that congressional task force investigation into what happened there at Butler, Pennsylvania. To talk about all this, I want to bring in my colleague Elizabeth Schulze, who was live for us at the White House. Elizabeth, are we hearing reaction from the administration? And also help us unpack a little bit of these investigations that we do expect to continue.
Yeah, Jay, we've asked the White House for reaction on the resignation. No word yet. We'll be sure to bring that to you as we get it. But the reality is that as the security failures have become clear in the days since that assassination attempt on former President Trump, there have been bipartisan calls for Kim Cheadle to step down. This has now become clearly something that both sides of the aisle agreed on. There was a massive security failure, and it's notable that that has shifted as the scale of the security failure became clear. In the immediate days after, we did hear the White House say they had full confidence in the Secret Service director. Clearly, that has changed.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much. I'll take it back here at the desk. Jay, thank you as well. I want to bring in now Pierre Thomas and Aaron Katersky, who were with us for the special report just a short time ago. Pierre, let me start with you. As I said, you were referenced several times in this, heated hearing yesterday, and a lot of the lawmakers were frustrated that you got more answers out of Kimberly Cheadle than they did. Can you tell me why that is? Why couldn't she answer their questions?
Well, Phil, let me say first that I was in many ways surprised that the director did not come with more specifics than she gave out yesterday. We've been reporting in real time detail after detail since last week, all of it accurate. And some of the information, I'll just put it this way, came from her agency. And the fact that she was not willing, for whatever reason, she made a strategic decision not to provide details that they already had. She claimed that it was because of the ongoing FBI investigation. But we know the Secret Service is doing the post-mortem on what took place in the moments leading up to the attack. That is going to be a strategic decision I'm sure that she, in hindsight, will regret, because there was information she could have provided that for whatever reason she chose not to. I was perplexed watching the hearing, seeing her take all this incoming on questions she had an answer to. For example, the number of shell casings found on top of the roof where the shooter was killed. You know the details. Now, even if that changes over the next few days and weeks, nobody on Capitol Hill would have crucified her for that. What they crucified her, and I use that word, selectively here, was that too many basic questions she came in with a plan not to answer. Now, she's a very tough individual, very stoic, and she took it. And she took insult after insult, call after call for her to resign. But it was clear to me after the hearing, even though I talked to her staff as late as 8 p.m. last night, and they were maintaining she's going to stand by, she's going to stand by. But when you have both the chairman of the committee and the ranking Democrat, Mr. Raskin, calling on you to resign, and not a bit of support from any Democrat or Republican on that committee, the clock was ticking.
Yeah, it certainly was. And Aaron Katersky joins us as well. Aaron, you have her letter of resignation there. How does she frame this?
In a note to the workforce, she said she did not want to be a distraction. All the calls for her resignation, she didn't want that to distract from the mission of the Secret Service going forward. She said she accepts full responsibility for what she called the security lapse in Butler, Pennsylvania. And she said it's with a heavy heart that she does offer her resignation. She couldn't survive. It was almost inevitable as soon as those bipartisan calls came during the hearing. And Phil, it's an end to a rather storied Secret Service career. She spent more than 20 years there. She protected Vice Presidents Cheney and Biden. It was then that now President Biden got to know her. She was installed as the director about 2 years ago to high praise from the president. But she made clear in the congressional hearing that she did not sign off on security plans. Not that she would necessarily be expected to, but the members of Congress found just a lack of accountability. They also found that the lack of answers terribly frustrating.
Yeah, but it's good you point that out. She does have an almost 30-year career, and it is a storied career, but this is an agency where it's a no-fail mission. And you fail once, and the buck stops here, and she's at the top. All right, Aaron, thank you. I want to bring in Jay O'Brien from Capitol Hill. Jay, as Aaron says, and Pierre agrees with, this was sort of an inevitability. When, you know, the House Oversight Committee, when you have Dems and Republicans on the House Oversight Committee united in their anger against someone, not good.
Yeah, and that almost never happens, Phil.
Right.
And frankly, this was something that Republicans were considering doing for quite some time, grilling her here on Capitol Hill in the wake of that assassination attempt on former President Trump. Even when I was at the RNC this time last week, I was talking with top House Republicans there, and they were dismayed about the details that they were learning on phone calls and in briefings about exactly what happened there at Butler, Pennsylvania, and the timeline of all of this. You know, the shooter first noticed by law enforcement 60-plus minutes prior to that Secret Service sniper engaging him and things of that nature. Members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, frankly, but largely Republicans, were saying that that was unacceptable, that they wanted to extract a pound of flesh from the Secret Service secretary, as one member described to me, here on Capitol Hill in hearings. And what you saw yesterday was that they had that public hearing, and they asked her very pointed questions, and they were just not satisfied with what they heard from her. She didn't answer many of the questions. She said she couldn't because there was that ongoing investigation. So what she said on the Hill did not satisfy anyone, and even continued, and if not increased, those calls for her to resign.
And Pierre, I want to bring you back in because something you said really struck me, because I've been covering this for a week as well. And I actually did a story, I think Saturday for Good Morning America, that was an actual timeline. We had a timeline because of her agency. We were able to piece these things together because of information that we got from her agency. She could have said and other sources, correct. At 5:41, this happened. At 6:06, this happened. I mean, it just seemed like, and tell me if I'm wrong, because you've covered so many of these and people who have been prepared to speak in front of Congress. Seems like someone may have even just given her bad advice about the prep, like just go in there and let them dress you down, let them get their sound bites, and you'll move on. But that doesn't seem like what happened.
Again, the decision not to give available information that she had at her fingertips was the fatal flaw, if you will, in the presentation. And Phil, we've all covered many hearings in our times in Washington. The fact that in this divided Washington, there was no carping between Democrats and Republicans at each other. None that I saw. Even though the Democrats were making points about gun control and assault rifles and these kind of things, the Republicans didn't attack them for doing that. And the points that the Republicans made from time to time, including using curse words, where Democrats, could have, pushed back strongly. There was not any partisan bickering. All the incoming was coming toward Kim Cheadle. And I think a number of things that probably sealed her fate. She noted that she had not been to the scene since the incident happened. had not been to the scene. And the fact that she could say that no one had been suspended or reprimanded thus far, 9 days out, was a telling blow.
Yeah, and a lot of the search for answers started with your one-on-one with her, Pierre. So thank you for that great reporting. I want to bring in Elizabeth Schulze now because, Elizabeth, you're at the White House and have a statement now from President Biden about this, right?
Yeah, Phil, we did just get a statement